Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom.
Hey, it's day 2 of our literature unit, and the book that we're going to be focusing on, and that we've already started actually, is North and South, a novel by the author Elizabeth Gaskell. She's British. She was British. She's gone. She wrote this book about Victorian England, and she did so much descriptive work, I should say, about the class struggles, especially the working class and the kind of life that they were forced to lead in industrial England, that she's seen as not just a novelist, but also somewhat of a historian in some ways. So it's kind of fun to read this book. You learn a lot about what life was like back then. Those are actually my favorite kind of novels. Although this isn't called historical fiction, it could be in some ways, at least kind of the feel of it. Historical fiction is a type of novel where the history or the historical facts are correct, but the people in the story are all made up. They're all fictional. I love those books too, but this one is a really great book if you want to know what life was like in the mid-1800s in England, when things were changing so fast. We were getting, the railroads were coming into being, our factories were starting, and a lot of the working class were leaving the fields as peasants and going into cities and working in factories. And life was tough there. And back then, there were no laws against children working in factories, and so there are a lot of kids in really bad situations, and a lot of them didn't live to even be 18.
Oh, no, that's pretty terrible. Hopefully things have changed in England since that time.
You think?
I certainly hope so, but, I've never been to England before, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
But we do have an interesting contrast in this book between North and South. The South village there in Helston is a nice country town there. Life is peaceful there. But then they move up to Milton in the north, which is a dirty, disgusting industrial town with lots of pollution, and people get sick easily there. So you can see the contrast there between North and South. And that's kind of what we were talking about last time. It's all the story of Margaret Hale and her family when they move up north, and when she meets the boss of one of the mills there. That's kind of where we left off. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read today's lesson and continue to summarize our featured novel for the month of August, North and South. Listen carefully. Mrs. Hale's health worsens, and her dying wish is to see Frederick, Margaret's older brother, who lives in exile in Spain. He was involved in a mutiny in the Navy and risks being hanged if he returns. The family sneaks him back into England to see his mother. After Mrs. Hale's death, Margaret escorts Frederick to the train station to help him escape. However, Mr. Thornton sees them and assumes the young man is Margaret's lover. This could cause a scandal if it were made public. On the train platform, Frederick's old acquaintance, Leonards, recognizes Frederick and intends to turn him over to the authorities for a reward. They have a scuffle, and Leonards falls off the platform. Margaret learns Leonards died a few days later when the police arrive to question her. She denies being at the scene and feels deeply ashamed of her lie. To protect Margaret's reputation, Mr. Thornton uses his influence to convince the police not to pursue the case. Several months later, Mr. Hale dies, and Mr. Bell, Margaret's godfather, appoints Margaret as his heir. Not long after, Mr. Bell also dies, and Margaret inherits his estate. Mr. Thornton, however, has lost money as a result of the workers' strike and his own bad business deals. He will likely have to close the mill. Touched by Mr. Thornton's more compassionate way of conducting business, Margaret offers to use her new wealth to help save the mill. They confess their admiration for each other and get engaged, thereby uniting their distinct values in a new partnership.
So when we last left off, we know that Margaret had tried to protect Mr. Thornton from rocks being thrown at him. And to kind of repay her, there were gentleman laws back then. Gentlemen were supposed to act in a certain way. He proposed marriage to Margaret. He actually had already fallen in love with her, but she did not want to marry him. And she was kind of rude when she turned down his proposal. So things get very weird between them. When this unit starts, we're talking about Mrs. Hale's health. She gets worse and worse, gets more and more frail, and her dying wish is to see Frederick, her son. So she had 2 children. You're thinking, oh, Margaret's the only child, but turns out they have an older son who had to leave the country because if any of the UK police find him, he would have been hanged, I guess, because of something that happened on a naval ship that he was on. Anyway, Margaret's older brother it says here, lives in exile in Spain. If you're living in exile, it means you have left your own country and can't return, because if you do return, you're going to have some sort of consequences, punishment. You might have been exiled because you protest the government and they think you're a bad person, so you have to leave. In his case, he was on a ship with a really evil captain, and a lot of the sailors decided we're not going to let the captain hurt any more people. So they tied up the captain and they took control of the ship, and that's called a mutiny. And actually, Frederick was innocent, really, of anything bad. He's a good person, but, if you're involved in a mutiny, the Navy's usually going to side with the captain unless really good testimony and evidence comes out. And a lot of the people who could testify for Frederick were no longer around. So he is living in Spain. His mom's very close to dying, and he tries to get back into the country to see his mom one last time.
Yeah, he's kind of stuck in Spain there because of that mutiny, and he probably wants to get back to good old England to have some scones and meat pies and stuff like that. He is sick of being forced to eat flan and gazpacho, and
Spanish food.
Yeah, they probably even forced him to take flamenco lessons in Spain as well. Who wants to do that?
Wait a minute, he actually marries a beautiful Spanish woman, so
now
it's
that's
not all
a different
bad.
story. Yeah, the Spanish girls, that would definitely be an incentive to remain in Spain there. But still, he needs to get back to England to see his poor old mother.
Yeah.
So the family sneaks him back into England to see his mother. Sneak just means you do something secretly. They manage to get him in, and maybe they have a boat or something that gets past the Coast Guard or whatever. And after Mrs. Hale's death, Margaret escorts Frederick to the train station to help him escape. So, yeah, he's still wanted by the authorities in England there for being part of a mutiny. So, of course, she takes him to the train station. We've got the word escort here. That just means you accompany someone to some place and you're kind of their supervisor. You could escort someone out of the restaurant, for example, if you've been an obnoxious customer. But, yes, it just basically means to take someone out of some place or take them to some place.
We also use it as a noun if you're someone's date. Maybe you're going to a big ball or it's a high school graduation dance and you're someone's escort. And we say it differently then. So, yeah, she goes along with Frederick to the train station. It's late at night. Keep that in mind. And they run into someone who is not one of Frederick's friends, actually. Mr. Thornton also sees them, the two of them, as Margaret's giving her brother a hug. Now, back then, women didn't touch other guys. You could, of course, hug your brother, but Mr. Thornton thinks he's seen Margaret hug or, kiss a lover. So this is not good for Margaret's reputation. This could cause a scandal. So here it says he sees them and assumes the young man is Margaret's lover. If you assume something, you don't really have any evidence or proof. It's just this, idea that you have. It hasn't been proven to be true, but he assumes it looks like she really likes this guy. She hugs him and gives him a kiss.
Yep, he makes that conclusion based on some evidence. You could make assumptions about people all the time. People here in Taiwan just assume that I'm an American if they see me as a white person, so they speak to me in English.
But they do it without evidence, without proof.
Right. It's based on kind of general knowledge or something, but you actually haven't really asked about it. So he assumes that Margaret and the man are lovers. And again, this could cause a scandal, which is 丑闻 in Chinese, a scandal. We talk about scandals all the time in the government, usually. And there would be a scandal if other people found out about it. It would cause a scandal if it were made public, which means everyone knows about it.
Yeah, because back then, if this came out, Margaret would never receive any other proposals from gentlemen. And she might be forced to either stay single her whole life or marry someone in the lower class, which I doubt she would do. So, yeah, this is a big deal. Margaret sees that Mr. Thornton sees her. She's horrified, but there's nothing she can do. She has promised to protect her brother Frederick, so she can't tell Mr. Thornton, hey, this is my brother. Don't worry about this. She just has to keep her mouth shut because Mr. Thornton has some power with the legal authorities there. So that's another story. But yeah, she has to just keep her mouth shut, knowing Mr. Thornton thinks she's a bad woman. Okay, guys, right now we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back to continue talking about the plot.
Hello, my name is Shelby. 现在开始第二天中文讲解。继第一天背景交代，故事进入冲击阶段了。第一段，玛格丽特妈妈身体不好，死前想见到她的哥哥，她在西班牙逃亡。后面 who 形容词子句中的 in exile 表示流亡或者是离乡背景的人，例如说 a political exile 就是政治的流亡者。In exile 当副词来修饰前面的动词 lives， 表示流亡生活着。第二句，他参与了一次海军的叛变。Was involved in 参与 involve 本身就是动词，使卷入，所以涉入某事经常写成被动 be involved in something， 或者是加上反身代名词写成 involve oneself in something。他参与许多学校活动，就可以写说 He is involved in many school activities， 或者 He involves himself into many school activities. Mutiny 是叛乱 Put down a mutiny 镇压叛乱。接着冒着被绞死的危险 Risk 冒着什么的风险，后面加上 VING。例如 They risk losing their jobs， 他们冒着失去工作的风险。他们偷偷将他带回国，之后又护送他帮助逃跑。桑顿呢，以为那是玛格丽特的情人。我们到第六句，如果被公诸于世，可能会引发丑闻。Scandal 丑闻。If 子句是假设的语法，万一被公诸于世的话，事实上还没有人知道。所以动词写成 were made 过去被动。假设语法中 be 动词写成过去形态的时候，不管主词的人称，一律用 were。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, let's continue with our summary of North and South, our featured work of literature for the month of August. So where we left off, we were still on the train platform at the train station there. Again, Margaret was escorting Frederick to the train station to help him escape, but Mr. Thornton saw Margaret and Frederick and he assumed that they were lovers, and that could cause a scandal if other people found out about it. Now, there's another person on the train platform. Frederick's old acquaintance, Leonard's, recognizes Frederick and intends to turn turn him over to the authorities for a reward. So Leonard's here is somebody who knows Frederick, but they're not buddies. Leonard's, I think, is a bad apple here, and he wants to do harm to Frederick. They're old acquaintances, which means they know each other, but we don't know their relationship. Evidently, they just know each other. They're not friends.
Oh, they're not friends. But he knows about the mutiny. And, if anybody sees these people that were involved on the boat, or the ship, I should say, with a mutiny, if you turn them in, if you tell the police, you get some money. And that's what Leonard's wants. Leonard's is a bad dude. He's kind of a criminal type. So they have a scuffle. They start fighting. And Leonard's falls off the platform. It doesn't kill him then, but he does, just kind of lie there for a minute. And Margaret then learns later that Leonard's died. A few days after they had that scuffle, although her brother isn't guilty of killing him. The police arrive at Margaret's house unexpectedly and ask her if she was there on the train platform that night. She feels like she has to lie to protect her brother. And of course, back then, lying was a big deal to, the good people there. Lying was a big deal. Nowadays, everyone lies. It's no big deal. So she feels terrible, but she denies. She says, no, I wasn't there. When the police try to question her, it's just one guy. She denies being at the scene, but feels deeply ashamed. If you're ashamed of something that you did, you're really embarrassed. You wish that you could change things. You don't want anyone to know about it because it makes you look like a bad person or stupid or just, not honorable. So to protect Margaret's reputation, Mr. Thornton, remember, he has some influence with the police and judges, and he has this police guy come to him and he says, do not investigate Margaret Hale further. If she says she wasn't there, she wasn't there. She's a lady. And back then, you just took ladies' and gentlemen's word at face value, meaning you didn't need proof. You just believed them.
Yeah, Mr. Thornton is a rich and powerful man, so he uses his influence to convince the police not to pursue the case, okay? Just leave Margaret alone, okay? Otherwise, I could cause trouble for the police department. You know what I mean?
He's kind of a part-time judge back then. That's kind of the system that
Could
they
be,
had.
yes. He has some influence and power there that the police would like to have. So, indeed, they probably say, okay, we'll do what you say, Mr. Thornton, whatever you say. Now, several months pass. Several months later, Mr. Hale dies. Remember, he was the minister who had a crisis of conscience and left that town in southern England and moved up north, and now he's passed away. He dies. And then we've got a new character, Mr. Bell, who just happens to be Margaret's godfather. And you have that here in Taiwan, your godmother, your godfather. They're not related, but they have some sort of position in your family. And Mr. Bell appoints Margaret as his heir. So here we've got the verb to appoint, which means basically you give someone a position in your organization. This happens in governments all the time. The president will appoint ministers in various departments of the government.
Yeah, Mr. Bell and Mr. Hale were best friends their whole lives. And Mr. Bell was very, very rich. He had made a lot of good investments. He's an upper-class guy, and he loves Margaret. He's already her godfather, so he's already loves her, wants to take care of her, wants to make sure she's okay. And remember, her dad didn't have any money to leave to Margaret, so now she's alone. So Mr. Bell, he has cancer at one point in the book and knows he's going to pass away and tells Margaret he's going to make her his heir. She's going to inherit all his money. So not long after, he also dies, and Margaret inherits his estate, which is really big. Part of his estate is the factory that Mr. Thornton runs his business out of. He owns that building, so what it means is Margaret owns the cotton mill that Mr. Thornton has been using for his business. Well, sadly, Mr. Thornton has also lost money. It's a bad economy. as a result of the workers' strike and some bad business deals, he will likely have to close the mill. He does have to close the mill for a little while. Touched by Mr. Thornton's more compassionate way of conducting business, Margaret offers to use her new wealth to help save the mill. Now, to be honest, guys, at this point, Margaret has feelings for Mr. Thornton. A lot of things have been happening since they had their big argument. But they've both helped each other in different ways. And she's helped him become a better mill boss. He treats his workers better. He feels happier about that. Now, if you conduct business, it's just a way of carrying out business. We use conduct for doing experiments. The scientists will conduct an experiment to see if their theories are able to be proven true. So it just means to organize something, to carry it out. You also have a conductor who conducts an orchestra, you know, the guy who stands in front of all the instruments and waves his arms, or that stick called a baton. So yeah, she feels like she can take a lot of the cash that she's inherited and invest in the mill. It'll get the mill running again, give people jobs back, and it will also help her Mr. Thornton.
Indeed, so she's touched by his compassionate way of conducting business. She started to actually like him now.
Oh, she loves him at this point.
Oh, okay, very good. So she offers to use her new wealth to help save the mill. Isn't that nice? She got an inheritance, and now she can use that money to keep the mill open. And they confess their admiration for each other. They probably even confess their love for each other. I love you. Oh, I love you too. I want to be with you forever. Oh, I want to be with you forever too. So they confess their admiration for each other, and then they get engaged. Let's get married. Here's the engagement ring. It's a 2-carat diamond. Don't you like that?
Wow.
And so, I don't know if they exchanged diamonds back then. I think diamonds were kind of introduced by the De Beers company in the 20th century there. So we're kind of, the guys are now stuck with buying diamonds for their fiancés now because of that. Thanks a lot, De Beers. But in any case,
a diamond
yes,
company, De Beers. Yeah.
I'd rather give my wife a sapphire than a diamond. Actually, they're more valuable.
I love sapphires.
They're more beautiful too, I believe.
I love them.
But in any case here, yes, they do get engaged, and thereby they unite their distinct values in a new partnership. So thereby means kind of as a result. So they get engaged, and therefore, or thereby, they unite their values in a new kind of partnership. It's not really a business partnership. It's a marriage partnership. They're going to get married, and I guess the story has a happy ending, doesn't it?
It does. Sadly, people were wanting to have a sequel to this novel, but there never was one. But I was telling one of my friends, when there's a very popular book, what happens sometimes afterwards is there are a lot of fans who write fan fiction. So there are a lot of different books out there that are different versions of North and South at this point. So they take the end of the story and then they write what they think happens after this. So there are a lot of good writers out there who are just amateurs but want to, show their talent with the world. You should check that out, guys. Right now, time once again to listen to our Chinese teacher.
第7句，后来呢，有个人认出他哥哥，决定举发他。后半句 intend 想要，而 turn over 有打翻、翻转、移交等意思。turn him over 移交他 to the authorities 给当局者。下一句第8句的地方 they have a scuffle 他们起了冲突。scuffle 是扭打 to get into a scuffle 扭打起来，或者当作动词扭打 to scuffle with my brother 跟我弟弟打在一起。结果呢 Leonard 从月台上摔下来，几天后警察上门， Margaret 才知道 Leonard 已经死掉了。第9句他否认当时他在现场， deny D-E-N-Y 否认，后面加 V-I-N-G 或者是 that 子句，所以 be at the scene 在现场， be 写成 being， scene 是场景， at the scene 在现场，有时也会听到有人说 on the scene， On the scene 虽然也通用，不过是较口语的表达方式。同学写文章的时候，我们还是建议用 at the scene。最后一句，桑顿说服警方不要追究。句子中间呢不定词 to convince the police... convince 是说服 to convince somebody to do something 说服某人做某件事情，若不做某件事情再加个 not 说服警察不要追究。而 convince 去掉字尾 e 再加 ing 就变成 convincing 表示有说服力的 a convincing argument 富有说服力的论点。第二段第一句，玛格丽特的教父任命他是他的继承人，动词 appoint 任命 heir 继承人 h 不发音，继承什么就在他后面加个 to 名词。例如说，他成了一大笔财产的继承人， He falls heir to a large fortune。 玛格丽特有了一笔钱，可是桑顿却因为罢工等要关闭工厂。到第五句，被桑顿先生更有同情心的经营方式感动。句首 touched 感动的过去分词，这是分词构句，省略掉连接词 because， 主词玛格丽特以及 was 变成 been， 只剩下 touched。 后面的 conducting business conduct 实施管理， conduct business 经营事业，他决定帮助他，所以最后一句他们坦诚对彼此的欣赏。 Admiration 是爱慕，一种含蓄的感情，不像 love 或 like 这么的强烈直接，配合当时的民风，从而结合各自的价值观，在新的伙伴关系中。 Thereby 因此是个副词，不具连接词的功能，所以只能修饰句子，不能连结两个完整的句子，所以这里上半句是原因，彼此爱慕。Thereby 下半句不是完整的子句，而写成分词构句的形态。好，以上是今天的讲解，谢谢收听。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. We had a pretty good summary of our featured novel North and South, which again was written by Elizabeth Gaskell, an English writer of the 19th century. Don't confuse that book with North and South, another book written by an American novelist by the name of John Jakes, which was about the American Civil War.
Yeah, completely different.
Completely different story, but maybe in a similar fashion. They're both historical fiction. They're a fictitious story taking place during a period of history, but we're not focusing on the American Civil War. We're talking about conditions in England during the Industrial Revolution, and we will talk about Elizabeth Gaskell in our next program. So please join us then. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.